balanced, and I'll be as fair as I can be. I have children in the district, I have a degree in education, and I also serve as a councilman on the Charlotte Borough. So I see many sides of this issue. And I want to introduce our panelists for tonight. State Senator Tim Solvay, who is on his way apparently to be here. Representative Jesse White, School District Business Manager Paul Soroka, School Board Member Chris Love, School Board Member Jamie White, and Fort Cherry Education Association President Jeff DeLatch, and PTA President Gina Tedesco. I'd like to thank all of them and all of you, because this meeting was put together on very short notice. Literally within a few days, this was everyone's time was put aside to come and take care of this issue tonight. It's very important. We're going to allow about 2 hours for the meeting, and just a few of the goals that we have for the meeting tonight are: 1, gain common understanding of the state budget deficit and its impact on Fort Cherry. 2, to start the process of coming to terms with the hard choices that we have to make. And 3, that we walk away with ideas on how the school community can collaborate to achieve more favorable outcomes for all. This evening, when I use the term school community, we mean that broadly, and that indicates all stakeholders, our state representatives, district administrators and staff, school board representatives, parents, teachers, and associations that represent all the stakeholders. It's the PTA's view that working through these cuts needs to be a collaborative effort, and this is the reason why we have partnered with Representative White to co-sponsor this meeting. We'll start with the big picture from Tim Solvay and Representative White to gain an understanding of the state budget deficit, the $1 billion in education cuts, and the current happenings in Harrisburg around this issue. We'll drill down to local impact with School Business Manager Paul Soroka. We'll learn about the budget process from school board members and hear the perspectives, recommendations, and on the hard decisions that have to be made. We'll hear viewpoints from teachers' unions and PTA. We'll have question and answers from everyone in the audience. We'll try to get to as many people as we possibly can. We want to hear as many ideas from everyone as possible. And to conclude, a roundtable of rapid-fire recommendations from our panelists on how the school community can collaborate on this important issue. I'll just go over a few ground rules we're going to have. There's going to be no politicking tonight, okay? We're here to come together on this issue, so we want to hear good ideas. We don't want to hear campaigning, and we just need to put our differences aside, because a lot of people are passionate about this issue, which is great, but we need to have ideas, and we need to have a calm way to represent them. Keep your emotions in check, and you can ask the hard questions, but let's just try to be civil. Okay, with that, I'd like to start the meeting, and we'll go down the panel and have everyone say a few words and explain their viewpoints on the issue. I guess we'll start with you, Representative.
Do we want to do the budget big picture? Do we want to start with that, or?
Yeah, let's start with that.
Can everybody hear me okay? Okay. If I'm not loud enough, let me know and I'll go to the microphone. First of all, thank you. I want to thank the PTA and everybody for putting this together on such short notice, and I'm glad to see we have such a decent turnout. What I'm going to do to begin with, and I think I saw Senator Solvay pull in a second ago, so he'll be able to join me in this. And it's nice to have both the House and the Senate represented, because you're going to hear, this budget issue goes on in 2 different chambers in Harrisburg, in the House and the Senate separately. And so we probably have slightly different perspectives of what we know and what we're seeing. A couple of things you need to understand. The state is supposed to pass a budget every year by June 30th. Last year we came pretty close. I think we were done on the 4th of July. The year before we weren't done until October for various reasons. It was a bit of a mess. We are required, unlike the federal government where they can borrow money and kind of run up deficits, the state is not allowed to do that. When we pass a budget every year, we can't make an expenditure unless we show how we plan on paying for it. So just to be clear, this isn't a situation like in Congress where they can run up a national debt. When you hear that they talk about deficits, we don't really have that in the state. We can borrow money for certain projects and other special programs, But for the general fund budget, which is what we're talking about here, we can only spend what we bring in. And we bring in our tax money. It's sales tax, it's income tax, things like that. So that's how we get to that money, and it has to be balanced each and every year. What happens is the process, and we're kind of right in the middle of it right now. Every year, and late February, early March, this year was March 8th, the governor comes into the House chamber, the Senate is also there, and they do a joint budget address. It's kind of like Pennsylvania's version of the State of the Union. The governor will come in, we do all the pomp and circumstance and all that good stuff, and he'll then get down and make his budget proposal for the coming year and make his recommendations for any new programs, any cuts, anything like that. What will typically happen after that's done, and this year's budget was pretty dramatic because it did feature so many cuts. And one of the reasons, by the way, that we hear about so much, we're short, this budget shortfall, billions of dollars. One of the main reasons is, for the previous 2 years, we were able to rely on federal stimulus money. We all heard about the stimulus and all that stuff that happened. That stimulus package included direct aid to every single state in America. And it totaled about $2 billion a year for each of the last 2 years. And they put that in perspective. Last year's budget, the last couple of years, have been right around $28 billion. So $2 billion of that $28 billion came directly from the feds. If we hadn't had that the last couple of years, we would have been in the same situation we're in now. The stimulus money has run out. It was set to expire. It has expired. We knew this was coming. So the governor made his budget proposal. What then happens is the appropriations committees, those are the committees in the House and the Senate that kind of deal with the money, they hold hearings, they ask the agencies to justify their budgets and all that good stuff. They go through all that through the spring. And then we get to the point where in the House of Representatives, where I serve, somebody in the majority party will introduce a budget bill. And it hasn't been introduced yet. We're being told it's going to be introduced this coming Monday. So up until that point, and where we're at right now, everything is all proposed, and anything is subject to change, in theory. Because someone already asked me when I came in, are these cuts final? Are they set in stone? Senator? They're not set in stone. We have not voted on any of these proposals yet. What will happen, and then I'll let the senator jump in here in a minute. What's going to happen is the House will pass a budget bill. That bill will then go to the Senate. The Senate can either amend it or concur in it. If they concur in it, it goes to the governor for him to sign or veto. And if the Senate does not concur, it goes into what they call a conference committee. And what typically happens every year is what really happens is if the House and the Senate and the governor can't agree, they basically get in a room and negotiate. And the negotiations drag on, and there's various pressure points that are hit until there's an agreement that everybody could agree on. They kind of amend the bill to reflect the agreement. Everybody votes on it. We all go home. In previous years, this is my 5th year in Harrisburg, in previous years we had a political situation where we had the House being controlled by the Democrats, the Senate controlled by the Republicans, and then the governor, who was a Democrat but also often had views very different than the House Democrats. You kind of had 3 different competing viewpoints. It's a little bit different this year. As a result of last year's elections, we have a Republican governor, Republican House, and a Republican Senate. So I think that one of the things you'll see is you're not going to be able to see as much of the political blame game that has gone on back and forth in previous years, because one party owns everything. They can't really blame myself or Tim or the Democrats because they have enough votes to do whatever they want to do. So that's kind of where we're at procedurally. And I don't want to talk the whole time, so I'll let the senator speak up, and we can come back. But before, I will give you one update that the senator, because he's over in the Senate and may not have seen what happened in the House yesterday. I want to bring everybody up to date with where we're at. It did come to our attention, it was all over the news today, that as a result of the revenue projections, we anticipate, the governor's proposal was $27.3 billion, which is low compared to the $28 billion we've done the last few years. We found out as a result of revenue projections, we have an extra $500 million in the bank right now that we didn't count on, and we can anticipate, based on that, another $500 million. So we really have $1 billion sitting there that hasn't been budgeted for. At the close of the session yesterday, our Democratic Appropriations Chairman, Joe Markozik, asked the Republican Appropriations Chairman on the floor in kind of a little debate back and forth, A, when we were going to see a budget bill, and B, would that budget reflect the surplus? Because the thought was, great, you've got $1 billion you didn't plan on, you didn't have to raise anybody's taxes to get it, let's put it back into to fill up some of these cuts in both basic and or higher education. What we were told on the floor yesterday by the House Republicans is they are staying firm at $27.3 billion. That surplus will not go back to offset the proposed cuts. The governor's proposal is to put it away in a rainy day fund, which, I think that this meeting is proof that it's raining right now. And that's going to be the big battle. That's what you should be watching for, is when the Republicans in the House introduce their budget bill on Monday, what does it look like and how have they changed the governor's proposal? What we're hearing is that they're going to take $500 million from the Department of Public Welfare, which is primarily going to go towards a lot of that's medical assistance for seniors and things like that, and they're going to shift that back to put back some of the education cuts, but that's still not going to even fill up half of what was lost. So that's where the battle's focusing, and that's what you should be watching for starting on Monday. And with that, I'll turn it over to the Senator.
Thanks, Jess. And I heard a majority of what he had said to you before I come in. And along with that, there's some other funding that, and I don't want to say creative, but by doing some things that could be better financial managing, there's also been almost another $1 billion of money identified in the existing budget through other programs. So what all of us are saying is that with the $500 million that's right now showing up as surplus dollars anticipated from the revenue that Jesse just talked about, and our projections that we're hearing aren't quite maybe another half a billion, but at least a couple $100 million more that could end up in the surplus by the end of June 30. And this other dollars that they're finding out through some other corrective ways, there is no reason why we can't bring the funding back up to where at least equal to it was last year when it comes to the education funding, which will meet the needs of the basic ed and meet the needs of the higher ed, where a majority of the cuts were taken. I think we've all realized that it has been a little bit of a rough economic time from 2008 to where we are right now, but it has turned a corner and getting better. Where we're going to need now for everyone's help, because I don't think you have a problem with the Southwest delegation, and I'm going to say on both sides of that sides of the aisle, and we hate to sound and talk a partisan way, but unfortunately sometimes that's what happens, is that there seems to be a recognition of what public education means, especially in southwestern Pennsylvania. So you've got a lot of friends in the legislature, both in the House and the Senate, that want to do the end result that you want. We don't want to see teachers laid off, custodial or other support folks laid off. We don't want to see programs cut for the kids. I've watched for the past 13 years the importance of what not only full-day kindergarten, but the early childhood programs have meant and done to children in this area. And you have our commitment here that we're going to continue to fight for that as we have over the previous years. But we need your help in making sure that the rest of those folks understand it. Now, when I've been in the governor's presence, and he's talked and said, look, the funding that the state is providing is no different than it was in previous years, other than the fact that last year there was stimulus funding that was attached to the funding mechanism that I heard Jesse describing earlier whenever I first got here. Maybe yes, maybe no. The fact is, when you're spending $28 billion a year in education, both from the state and federal level and the local level, you still need to maintain that to make sure that the education is in place. And I understand that there's some tough problems in the urban areas, and the one Senate bill that they're trying to run right now is basically nothing more than a diversion of additional dollars into the Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and Harrisburg school system, which it's not necessarily the teachers or the schools themselves that are failing, It's the fact that these kids are in a tough scenario because they don't have a family structure or mechanism behind them. They don't have the support that they necessarily should have. And unfortunately, with the discipline issues that those teachers and administrators have to deal with in those urban city schools, it makes it tough for sometimes for even the good student to try to learn. So that's what they're attempting to do, is trying to put money into a situation that needs a whole lot more than money to make it better. And I realize we're worried about Western PA. You folks are worried about Fort Cherry. Jesse and I are worried about all the districts within this area, and we know that it could happen and make things at least equal to where it was in a previous funding cycle. Because all of the other things that they're trying to do is going to do nothing but either raise our property taxes, and that's things that not only you pay, but Jesse and I pay property taxes as well, and make tough decisions for this school board, which I know doesn't want to make the decisions that they have to. But if they don't have the funds coming from us, and they know they can't squeeze blood from a turnip from the tax base that they have, what other solutions are there? So what we're going to try to do is work together not only with this board, but every other board that we recognize here. And again, the focus is, there's got to be a massive, I don't know if it's a writing campaign or email campaign to the governor's office, and make him understand what early childhood intervention and education means. What does the classroom size that your school district and other school districts are trying to put in place, what that means for the children and how they learn. And at the end of the day, hopefully with the revenues that have been getting better, and there's been a lot of indirect sources that help bring those revenues up to where they were. Then some of the other things that we're looking to do to try to streamline government. And it's been a continual process over the past 5, 6, 7, 8 years of trying to streamline, make things tighter, make it more efficient so that these dollars can become available. So we need your help, and we're here also to listen and hear what you have to say. We know the success stories because we've seen them. You've seen pictures of all of us at the daycare centers, at the early intervention programs, at the other school programs that are out there to see how the kids are performing. So we understand it, but we do need your help to maybe just fill us in on other things that we either haven't talked about tonight or haven't touched with you, but also know that we need your help getting the word 225 miles east of here to a guy that lives in western Pennsylvania. I can't understand why he's taken this particular stance on things, but and as Jesse said, everything he did say is a proposal. And sometimes he likes, if he's like other governors that I've served under, and he's the fourth one that I've served under, they like to sometimes throw things out there that may seem extreme just to see how things react. And the reaction is what helps move things to a different level where it is. So he's thrown out his gauntlet. We need you now to help us tell him what really we want, what we need for our children.
Okay. All right, thank you. Next, we can hear from Paul Soroka.
Good evening, everybody. Can everybody hear me? Okay. Local impact. And the local impact for Cherry is pretty clear. Based on the governor's preliminary budget, our revenue structure is reduced by $1.3 million. That is a substantial blow to our revenue as it stands right now. We do not have the capacity of, say, a West Allegheny or South Fayette, where a mill is valued at roughly $1 million, to merely raise taxes 1 mil and generate $1 million in revenue. The index this year is at 1.9%. If we were to raise taxes, and nobody here is up here saying raise taxes, but if we would raise taxes, it would only generate $91,000 approximately. That hardly addresses the deficit. What we have done at the local level, in conjunction with your elected officials, I have contacted several of my organizations to put additional pressure on the government to realize what you're doing in Fort Cherry and other local, small, rural school districts. The bottom line is we're 1.3 million short. The only way we can address that is make adjustments to the expenditure budget. The current budget was presented in April to the board and community at an outline of about $177,000 in cuts. To get the additional cuts to even make this budget palatable, it would involve possibly furloughing staff. Now, this is a work in progress. Nobody is saying that 12 teachers are going to be furloughed, we're going to drop this, or we're going to drop that. As the picture in Harrisburg changes, and I think we can agree it's fluid at this point.
Very fluid.
Okay? We will change. But here are some of our obligations that we have to meet in the next 60 days. One, we have to have a preliminary budget approved by the board, with a 30-day window for public viewing prior to June 30th. That will be done May 16th. After that 30-day period, we have up till June 30th, by state mandate, to approve a budget. In my 9 years of experience, we have approved our budgets on time, because we have to. The state has not approved their budget in any of the 9 years that I've been here as a business manager. That may change the picture if the budget changes substantially between June 30th and could be November 30th, as it has happened in the past. In my 9 years, we've had to reopen the budget once to adjust for whatever ramifications that come down from Harrisburg. So, all I can stress to you from our end is, one, as both of your representatives have told you, you need to get your voice out there. Your school district officials are contacting people. But there is no additional revenue. We are a very rural, very small school district. That is a fact. There is no money coming from range resources across the street at this point because they are not drilling that well. And for another 18 months at least. So we cannot count on range resources to run over here with a check and save us. It's not going to happen immediately. We have to realize our tax base is rural. The district is sensitive to that fact. We do not want to raise taxes. That mill is only $48,000. That is not a heck of a lot of revenue, even if you raise it. So we are trying to do everything in a balanced method to avoid this. If the budget is passed June 30th and there's no substantial movement from Harrisburg and changes come and we do furlough people, we of course will bring those people back as the budget changes and as the budget dictates we can bring people back. But at this point right now, like I've said, we are 1.3 million short of revenues last year in a combination of grants, stimulus money, and basic ed funding. 661,000 is basic ed funding. At that point, again, we're going to have to pass the budget May 16th, and we're going to have something by June 30th at the latest. We are going to work very hard, and hopefully Harrisburg will expedite. If it does, it does. Then we'll adjust it accordingly. That's really all I have to add. I'll turn it over to the board members at this point.
I guess my perspective, going through a budget of this nature, I try to compare it to how we operate in the private sector, where we have revenues coming in through sales and things of that nature, and then we have our expenditures. And I try to equate that. We don't have the luxury that when things get tough to go out and raise millage and bring more income in. You've got to figure out ways to either control your expenses or figure out ways of generating new revenues. In this particular case, there's been discussion, there's been preliminary proposals, items for consideration. I guess from my perspective, that I believe we need to dig deeper and step back instead of looking at things that are going to immediately impact our students in the form of furloughing teachers, staff, whatever. I think we need to look at some of our other expenses and take a look at that, because we really haven't taken, in the materials that I've seen thus far, a real hard-line look. And later on, when we get to I think I heard a rapid fire session of ideas. I've been plowing over the budget, looking at items that are candidates for consideration, more than just consideration, actual cuts. None of them will actually affect teachers. None of them will affect administration. And the fact of the matter is, there are areas in our budget that we could cut and cut successfully and avoid those. It's not the entire amount, obviously, but it's a big chunk, and I can talk about that later on. So, again, managing the expenses, obviously, is key. If, in fact, what's going to continue on in Harrisburg will continue. But I think throwing out some ideas later on is what I plan to do, and hope you'll join me in kind of ferreting those ideas out. Thank you.
Okay, Jamie.
My name is Jamie White, and I'm going to answer a couple of questions first. It's probably most of you have, but don't even want to ask. And the first one is, no, Jesse and I are not related. And the second one is, yes, we do have the same barber. Yes. or excuse me, property tax, real estate tax within the district. But I do think that needs to be one thing that we have to start seriously looking at and raising it within the cost of living on an ongoing basis. And I know nobody wants to hear that, but the reality of the matter is the renovations that we did 20 years ago on these facilities and expansions, they're now up. We have a very limited window of opportunity to do renovations, to do expansions, to do things to our campus here that are going to affect the next 20 years in our community. Our borrowing capacity is fixed. We have a certain amount that we pay every year, which is what we're using to pay off the bond. Based on our old interest rates, those bonds did about $32 million of renovation and expansion 20 years ago. If we use that same interest rate, that same amount, that means we have $32 million to do new work. And it's important to do that because we get reimbursed on a major percentage of that, between 25 and 30% in the state. So if we don't proceed with that, that's a reimbursement that we won't get. And for us, that means our community doesn't get $8 million of reimbursement from the state, which is a sizable amount of money. So again, I think it's important to be fiscally conservative right now, to raise the amount of money that we have in our capital fund so that we can, number one, reduce our interest rate on those bonds when we move forward. And we've already started that process. And when's the bonds paid off, Paul?
Approximately 2008.
October? Yeah. So it's totally paid off, which means we can start construction sometime prior to that or shortly after that and not have any tax increase for that amount of money. So again, I think it's very important that we keep our fiscal house in order. What that means is right now in our corporate checking account, our school checking account, we have about 10% or a little bit less than that, which is our fund balance. And one of the things that happens is when the state doesn't give us proper reimbursement and do it in a timely fashion, like what happened 2 years ago, because they didn't pass the budget quick enough, we actually had to borrow $500,000, set up a line of credit so that we could do ongoing operations. Because the reality is we only have enough money in our checking account to pay about a month and a half of our bills here. So again, this is another reason why it's very important to be conservative on our spending. So with that said, I think we have been doing a great job here for the last few years. And some things I definitely want to point out to Senator Solvay and Representative White is when you look at what Philadelphia spends per student, it's over $20,000. And it's even failing at that. With $20,000, 1 out of every 4 students they have, they pull out of the public school and put in a charter school. Pittsburgh, same thing. They're about $19,000. You say, okay, those are 2 city schools. Well, how about Quaker Valley? You know, that's certainly not a city school. They spend about $18,000 per student. But of course, they also have the tax base to support it. What about Fox Chapel? Well, they spend about $19,800 per student. Any guess what Fort Cherry spends? Last year's budget, we were at $14,300 a student. This year's budget, we're at $13,600 a student. So one of the messages I definitely want to get to Representative White and Senator Solvay is us rural school districts, which include us and Burgestown, Avella, and Chartiers, we're very efficient and very good at educating these young people. I think we're a good investment from the state for keeping our running here. So with that said, I'd like to pass it over to Mr. Gila.
Okay, everybody can hear me? All right. My name is Jeff Delach. I'm the president of Fort Cherry Education Association. And believe me, this has been on my plate for some time since the proposal came out. And it's been addressed a million different ways by a million different people. When RB and I went to Harrisburg Tuesday this week, we did see Mr. Solvay at the steps supporting the people that were there that were talking about the furloughs of teachers and talking about the taxing of the corporations and taxing of the oil drilling companies. And he showed his support. And I understand that the support is there from this side of the state because we are, as teachers, writing to our legislators and writing to our senators and writing to Governor Corbett. And I think more people have to do that. They're probably getting tired of hearing it from PTA and from the teachers because we bombard them. But I believe that if the community members, that it's really effective. I mean, it's the children that are really paying the price for this, and it's wrong. What happened in Wall Street to destroy, you know, the economic times that we are having is being put back on the backs of the children. That's wrong. And there's teachers that are here. We're looking at 12 and a half teachers possibly losing their job. That's 12.5% of our staff. That's pretty crazy to think about. We have never, and I've been the president of this association quite a lot of years now, and we have never seen the hard times that we're experiencing now. And like they said, and everybody has said at the table here, it is a proposal. Is he willing to move on it? The more people that bombard him and write things to him and tell him about it and voice your concerns. They have to represent us. The governor has to represent us also. We have to remember that. We have to put pressure on Harrisburg. They are hurting the rural schools. They are not hurting the South Bays, like Paul said. They are not hurting the bigger schools. That doesn't hurt them because they have the tax base to handle it. It's hurting us. We don't have the money coming in. We relied on the money from the state and from the federal stimulus money. We're trying everything we can. We're looking at how they're looking at possibly laying teachers off. One thing that I do know is that there are parts of the budget that's out there that they're throwing around, and they're looking at furloughing teachers for economic reasons. And by doing that, that throws a lot of things out of the window that exist. That throws seniority out of the window. And so therefore, districts would be looking at laying off some of the teachers that are older teachers that are, you know, experienced teachers do a great job. They're not just getting their feet wet and coming in the door. And that would give districts more money. And that's wrong. You know, you don't want that to happen. Big business had that happen. You go all those years and you're getting towards retirement age, and all of a sudden they just chop your legs right out from under you and they don't give you anything. This is not big business. These are teachers. They're dealing with your children and the students in this district, and they have a great concern for that, and they want to make sure that they're doing the right thing for the students. We want the government to do the right thing for the students, and we need you to be addressing that with the governor, with the senators, with the legislators, and write to them and let them know that. Thank you.
Went to Harrisburg earlier this week to express our concerns. Felt like it was a successful rally. We need everybody on board because it does hurt our students, it does hurt our community, it does hurt our children's future. Excuse me, future. As a community member, that's investing in our future. That's investing in a renewable resource, knowledge. Take that away from a child. I can't see that as, that would be the last to be cut. Instead, it seems to be the first on this chopping block. That's policy. So, please write to representatives, express your opinions. You may have voted for Corbett. You didn't vote for this. That's been the message all week. Pass that along.
Okay, Gina?
Well, I would just like to start by reading the mission statement of PTA. It's the mission of the Fort Cherry Elementary Center PTA to support and speak on behalf of our children and youth in the schools, in the community, and before governmental bodies and other organizations that make decisions affecting children. To assist parents in developing the skills that they need to raise and protect their children, and to encourage parent and public involvement in the public schools. With that being said, The PTA has a website, and on their website, they have endorsed the Pennsylvania School Funding Program, campaign, not program. On their website, they offer a variety of easy ways to take action, from contacting your legislatures to writing an opinion piece to the local newspaper, sign a petition. The website's also a great information and news source. One news headline tells of 2 districts considering a 4-day-a-week to save the teachers and programs. I don't know if that's feasible for us. But all stakeholders, parents, teachers, administration, staff, board, etc., can use this resource and take action. So if you would like to write this down, it just makes it easy. It gives you all the contact information that you would need to have. It's www.PAS, or all capital, CHOOL, capital FUNDING.org. And we would just like the board to look at things carefully, look at the budget, and which I know that they already have, and maybe cut some of the things that aren't educational more so than the ones like the math programs and the reading recovery program.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to all the panelists. Thank you for all your comments. Next, we're going to open this up to questions and comments. If you would, just raise your hand or stand up and just say who you want to address your question to. Okay. Actually, I'm going to start out by asking if someone is Mike Limas? Okay, great. He had emailed in a question, so I want to make sure we address him first.
I don't know what my daughter did for me. I'm not. I was in school before the computers were here.
Okay, no,
I don't know what it was.
Okay, hopefully she didn't make up anything.
Well, no, okay. Okay, let's go first off with Paul. I'll go with him. The administration has, this is personal, I guess I'm going to say. The administration has taken cuts or proposals for salary increases.
They've agreed to give back their increase.
Okay. Did you?
I'm part of the administration, the answer is yes.
And, all right, looking at the budget, I see an increase of your salary of 11%.
It's not an increase in base salary of 11%.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay. VOAG. Was there an increase in the VOAG program for Cherry School?
In what sense?
Under the entire program?
In terms of, are you talking
Increase.
VOAG?
Yeah.
I mean, there may have been a slight increase. That won't be due to the cost of supplies or anything like that going up. You're not talking about the VOTEC program.
No, it's VOAG in the school. Okay. Everybody's losing money. Everybody's staying where they are. Everybody should stay where they're at, if that's going to be the case.
Well, but there's a reality. Supplies go up in cost. You can't fix a cost like that.
You can eliminate some of their supplies they use. I don't know. Just a thought. I don't know much about the VOAG program. So, like I said, everybody's losing.
But again,
Nobody should be gaining.
if you're talking about maybe $1,000 of a $1.6 million deficit, that doesn't address the issue. It really doesn't. I mean, it's very minor.
Anything that's minor, but anything that's saved isn't spent. Right, Chris? I mean, you're kind of agree with me. I mean, like I said, you've gone through the budget.
It adds up. It adds up.
I mean, if you can get the cost of one teacher's salary saved, that's one you don't have to worry about furlough.
But again, I think the bigger issue here is the revenue issue. Okay, because the budget is lower than last year's budget. It is.
Let's talk about the budget. I just want to make sure you're reading this correctly. If you were looking on page 8 of the budget.
No, this was later on. It was way down. It was like in the 30s, I'd say. I went through it one at a time last night.
There's only 20 pages.
It was 48, the one I saw. On my computer, 48 pages.
All right, well, the VOAG budget, it was budgeted in 2010, 2011 at $300,000. They're projecting at the end of the year it'll be $287,000. So even though it was budgeted and that budget was approved, they spent $13,000 less than that. And They have a,
That's delivered from Fletcher Area Tech. That is what they charge us based on number of students enrolled in that community.
okay.
We have no control over it. It's based on the number of students.
That's right, this was the, I should have.
Okay, is that, do you have
No,
an additional question?
the last one is with the football program. It's not an educational, I don't know why it increased 100%. Their money the school board must have given them.
I can answer that question and answer what the resolution is if you'd like. The athletic programs have a 5-year cycle of replacing uniforms. In Dr. Dinnan's proposal, football uniforms are expensive, and that is the reality of the situation. That cost is related to new football uniforms for next year. Dr. Dinnan's proposal, that is going to be deferred. Okay? So that 10,000 or 9,000 cost is coming out as one of his.
It doesn't say that there.
Well, it says in the document that he put on the website.
It was earlier, I saw that it was going to be deferred, but it didn't say it was uniform, that what the cost was.
That's what it's related to. That's the answer to your question.
Like I said, it didn't do with education, so anything that you save is money you wouldn't have to worry about.
Well, it looks like we're gonna wear those uniforms another year. Okay, anyone else have a question? Okay, right here.
Last night I watched on the news, Ambridge Area School District has now opened their naming rights to corporate sponsors to help alleviate their shortfalls. What's the chances of possibly renaming Gary Stadium with the corporate funding?
I don't know.
What's the,
I don't know if
what's the chance of,
anyone want to address that.
getting the
I
high
don't know how
school?
much money would be there, but, everything else.
They're also asking for former students that are well-to-do to help. What's the chance of, asking Schottenheimer or Marvin Lewis to sponsor and rename the gym wing of the building? It'll help.
I'll answer that if you'd like. You guys don't mind.
Okay.
I might as well, since I'm probably having a hot seat anyway. The answer to Marvin Lewis and Marty Schottenheimer has been no.
Okay, I'm just saying, what about
They've been approached.
corporate sponsors?
They've been approached. As far as corporate sponsors, there really aren't that many corporate entities located here in Fort Cherry School District. I mean, you have Giant Eagle, you have a few small businesses on 980, you don't have a major corporate presence here. Unlike South Point, where you can pick the corporate sponsor, it's a different venue here. And the issue of renaming Jim Gary Stadium, I would candidly say I won't touch that 10-foot pole.
I watched the news, they suggested, made that. I understand Mr. Gary was locked in.
In all deference to Coach Gary, his body of work here, I think that would be a public relations nightmare, personally. And I wouldn't.
I'm not coming back. I'm just
All right, that's good.
bringing
Thanks
up
for-
a suggestion.
That's good. It's all good.
Consider.
We're all trying to think outside the box.
Sure, we want to hear everybody's ideas.
Yeah.
So, someone else over here had a question? Sure, go ahead.
I have comments.
All right.
My name is Jane Elliott Worthington, and I have a student here in the school district who is 7 years old, who is in the Reading Recovery Program. The Reading Recovery Program is extremely important. This is a program that I've heard your own school board tonight not come out in defense of saving, and I'm disappointed in that. I have heard, however, comments made like government should do the right thing for our students, the school board should do the right thing for our students here. I'm pretty familiar with building houses, building buildings. If you were going to build a foundation and you wanted to come in on budget and you wanted to come in on time, you wouldn't take bricks out of the foundation of that building so that you could save a little money and come in on the budget. So this year, when you're looking at our budget, please don't take the foundation, which is the first grade reading program, for the slowest readers in this district, which will have lifetime consequences to this district's learning. Please don't take this program away. And when we're looking at the budget, we're looking at taking reading teachers, math teachers. We're not looking at world social studies. We're not looking at phys ed teachers. We are looking maybe at a band instructor But we're looking at reading and math teachers to be eliminated. I'm looking at this budget clearly. I'm hearing what you're saying clearly. I'm an educated woman. And you're looking first to take, which your own board agrees. You say that when the government is going to do the right thing, the first thing on the chopping block should not be education. Although the first thing on our chopping block tonight was the Reading Recovery Program. You're not doing any justice to our children tonight by even looking at the Reading Recovery Program. You have the right to read. You're educated. You know how to read. First graders need that right also. If they do not have a firm foundation, this school district has failed them.
Okay, well, thank you.
I wanted to respond not to your specific comment, but to the general tone of what you said, and I mean that in a good way. It's really, it's almost ridiculous that we have to be sitting here looking at what, do we have to choose between social studies and reading, or making these ridiculous choices. And I do not envy, the members of the school board have a very difficult challenge because they don't have a choice. They have to propose a budget that fits, that balances. And no matter what they choose to keep or not keep, in theory, nobody's going to be happy. I mean, it's just the reality of it. But the thing that I think that makes me just really angry is, and if I put some information out about some of this, there's no need for us to be having this conversation in theory. There just isn't. I was astonished yesterday when on the House floor when they told us, yes, we have a surplus, yes, it could be used to fill these holes and to restore education funding, but no, we're not going to use it. I just looked around, and some of my colleagues did the same thing. We're like, what planet are we living on right now? What sense does any of this make? And, when you look at the overall things we're seeing in Harrisburg right now, in addition to the reduction of the funding, we've seen it, and the Senator touched on it, a proposal for school vouchers. Estimated cost $348 million that will not benefit Fort Cherry. Right now we have cyber charter schools that are abusing the system. They are just absolutely abusing the system, and it is bleeding hundreds of thousands of dollars from public school boards. We were on track. We did something called a costing out study in Harrisburg, which determined what was the right way to fund school districts. Because if you look at the sheet, one of the sheets that I provided, and it's the one with the little boxes on it, and it shows what the cuts were to Fort Cherry, what it would cost per student to make that up, and it's already been touched on here a little bit. To make up those cuts, $273.76 per household in additional taxes is what would make that up. When you look at the cuts that were made in Mount Lebanon School District, which I think we can all agree is a little bit better off than we are right now, to offset the losses to them, $56.52. The reason is they have the tax base, and the way that the state has been funding education has not been it's not been fair. I know it sounds kind of like whining, but it's the reality. So we did this costing out study to determine what's the best way to get more state funding into local schools, because the more state funding goes in, the more evenly that tax revenue is distributed, which helps rural small districts like Fort Cherry. What Tom Corbett is doing is not only undoing everything we did in the costing out study, which was a bipartisan, educated, long-term study. It wasn't something done on the back of a napkin. He's undoing that, and he's taking us many, many steps further backwards. And, if you look at the other sheet that I gave, it talks about some of the other sources of revenue, and we brought this because people have asked us about certain things. I'm not necessarily endorsing any of them, but people have said, well, there's got to be ways to get more revenue. This is a list of things we could do as a state to increase revenue that would not cost you as a regular taxpayer a penny. It wouldn't cost you a penny. And some of this stuff, if you look at some of the biggest ticket items on here, is something called closing the Delaware loophole. What that means in a nutshell is that big, huge companies that are based